Thank you for joining our webinar today. We'll be talking about using nested components for arrays in Revit. My name is Omar Ruiz Miranda, and I am an applications engineer here at CTC. For some of us, creating arrays in Revit seems like a very easy thing to do, but we still need to understand some of the things that might make the array fail, and that's what I want to touch up today. One of these things or mistake that we make is to try to use live geometry in an array. What I mean by live is like creating an extrusion or a sweep, something that we edit and sketch in the same family and try to array it. So to overcome this, we recommend to use nested components. This will allow us to have more control and consistency when creating these arrays. And this is all based on different calls on support, experience on creating the arrays myself. So hopefully this is useful for you guys. What we're going to try to touch on today or learn is to understanding the importance of setting up the family correctly, reference planes and parameters and formulas, even though we are not going to go into a very depth into setting up these formulas and things correctly today. I have already something preset just to show what we're going to talk about today, which is just the nested versus live geometry. Also, understanding the basics of creating a nested component based on a shape from a DWG file, just a little trick that as we are creating a nested component, we can just see how that would be useful as well. Knowing how to link the necessary parameters in that nested family for that geometry, and then also understanding how to place that nested family in the main family that will contain the array and also map its parameters. All right, let's go to Revit. So I will start with a basic, like I said, just a family that I had some parameters, some reference planes ready to go. All I will be doing is just adding some live geometry, going through the process and seeing it fail, so we understand the why. So I'm just going to open this family here. It's a very simple and basic door panel here. As you can see, just what I'm gonna try to do is create some mountains here or some bars. So if I go to front elevation, I already have some parameters, some formulas even with this, and of course the reference planes that will allow me to array it equally this way. And so I basically removed what I had before, the geometry and the nested components, so I don't have anything. I'm going to start by setting up what I would think in my work. If I create an extrusion or a sweep, I might expect it to just work and allow me to array. And at some point it does work, but it will fail. If it doesn't fail here as we're creating it, it will fail in the project at some point. So let's start like a usual workflow that I would be doing if I was creating this live geometry. So first of all, I would go to create, and in this example, I will be creating a sweep. I see it easier to have a path and a profile that I can just make it make that form, the mountain. So the first thing in a sweep geometry is to sketch the path. So basically, I would go and sketch the path manually and pick or create that path myself manually here as well. So there are two reference planes that I'm going to be basing this on, and the first one is going to be where this bar spacing. So there's two reference planes, so I'm going to go with the first one. So I will create a line here, and the way I would constrain it is to make sure that this line always follows this reference plane, and also the endpoints follow the height of this where the glass is going to be. So let's do an align to this top glass reference plane and to the endpoint of the line of the path. The same thing at the bottom here and to the middle. So some of these things or clicks that I'm going to be doing is to I'm going to guess that some of you already know some of this, how to constrain geometry and things like that. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time explaining how to do this. So this would be the way to constrain the path. So I'm going to finish the path. Now I'm going to edit the profile that I want. So I'm going to go, it offers me to go to either reflected ceiling plan or the floor plan. So I'm just going to select floor plan so I can see that profile here. So this is where the glass is. This is where the center of my path is going to be. So I want to create something to represent the mountain. I'm just going to go with a simple triangle. I could do a circle, I could do a rectangle. I just want to do like a little triangle at this point. So I'm going to go, let's see, from here, let's say there, here and back. Okay, and I'm going to try to constrain as much as possible this specific profile here. So I'm going to do align. My shortcut for align is AL. So I could do the command or the button right here. I can just do AL. And then I'm going to select that reference plane that is the face of that glass, select it, and then constrain it to my line of the profile. There's nothing else that I can use to constrain right now except maybe this this center reference plane, and I can do the endpoints of the lines. This, okay. So it is constrained. If I go and finish all the way out the profile and then the sketch itself completely, now you can see it's there. If I go to 3D view, now you can see it. And then in here now I can spend some time coming in, assigning this subcategory to the geometry, assigning the material. You know, I will spend my usual setup of the geometry, making sure that it will work fine with the rest of the door. So now it's looking good. And I think I can use this one now to create an array, and I'm going to go ahead and do that. So before I do that, I just want to show you, I'm trying to drag this, and it's constrained, so it's constrained as I wanted it to. It's not giving me any issues, and to show it, I'm going to move some reference or some dimensions here. So I'll go a height of 7, apply. It follows, it works. The width, let's see, you know, it works, stays in that reference plane as I want it to. If I change the light count, you know, it follows that reference plane. So it's working as I expected, right? So let me just undo like 3 times just to go back to original, right there. Okay, now that I know that it's working, I am going to do what I would just normally do, an array. So I come back here to our modify and then find my array or AR for the shortcut. So click on it, and I'll pick, by default is selected to the second, and that's how I set it up before as well. So I'm going to pick the first reference plane and go to the next one. Normal things to create an array. So I'll just give it a number here, maybe 4 instances on that array. That works. So because I placed it right here on top of these reference planes, I would expect it to work, but I need to test it anyway. So everything that you do, make sure you test. So to start, I'm going to go and start testing. So I'm going to change this, maybe 3 instances. Oh, so you know, if I knew what's going to happen, I would like, well, what did just happen here? Because this first element was constrained just a few minutes ago, a few seconds ago. Now it's unconstrained. It's not following this reference plane. So what did just happen, right? So let's undo, and then see if I move it, it's not constrained anymore. Let me undo again. So I'm going to go back here and then try to constrain it again. So that would be my first thought. So let's go edit the group. Okay, so why are you not constrained? You just keep moving. So let's find out why. So I'm going to go edit the sweep, edit the sketch pad, and then I notice that this is no longer constrained. So okay, maybe just the array unconstrained it. So I'm gonna constrain it again. So again, my endpoints, and little surprise here that we cannot constrain these ones because it's part of a group. The array is a group basically, and I cannot just constrain it to elements that are not part of the group. Like, okay, I can't do anything anymore. I'm going to cancel here. Yes. And I'm going to cancel here as well because there's nothing else I can do. Now, if I think about it, maybe, okay, I won't be able to constrain it in this case, but what if I try to constrain it just outside of the, or the geometry itself? So let's try that. So I come here and try to constrain it to the center. Oh, that lets me. That works. So far, you know, it's feeling good that I'm able to constrain now. So let's see the constrain it over here. Maybe constrain it over here. Okay, so far it's feels like it's working. No errors or anything else. Now if I go and try to change this, hey, it follows. That one, first one follows, but the second one doesn't. So maybe I can do the same thing. And so if I go edit group and try to do the same thing to the second, it's going to fail because, and I'll show you now in a minute why. So if I do the same thing here, align to the second, where did I go? Over here. Okay, that worked. This works. And that works. So let's finish that, and it gives me a constraint. For some reason, I cannot constrain the same way as I did my first element, my first bar. So I'm just going to cancel. I don't want to remove my constraints. Instead, I'm going to cancel this edit of the group. Okay, so what is another way that I can do it? Maybe just outside of the editing the group, I'm just going to go ahead and align it and lock it this way from here. So align, find my reference plane. I'll just find the center of that triangle, and it works perfect. Just what I wanted, right? So now let's test it. If I come back here and change it to 5 lights, and now they're both following. One more thing that I have to do is come here and select one of the elements of the array, and as you can see, it appears a little bar with the numbers, the account of the elements in that array. So if I click on it, I can put a label or assign it to a parameter. I already have one with formulas that is allowing it to do the many that I want. So I just need to link it and it works, right? So I am going to go and say light count. I want, so right now it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want maybe 3 light counts, and that works. So 1, 2, and 3. My array is working, right? According to me, so far it's working. So, but then because I work when creating families and all I do is just test every time I do something, I like to come back here and try to break it. So the first thing I'm going to do is to try to modify the values of the main parameters that might be affecting how my array is going to work. So one of them is width. So I'm gonna go ahead and try it. So change the value and it works. Perfect. So far so good. No issues here. Okay, good. Now let's see, we already tested this. Light count is working. All right. So one more thing to test is the glass thickness, right? So let's see, 1/2 inch. Okay, there's no change here, but let's go into reference level and see. Oh, so we didn't constrain this reference plane to that first element. So I can do the same thing here. If I go and edit the group and then align and lock, and the finish is constrained now. If I go back and change that value to 1/4, now it's, you know, that follows, but then the second one doesn't. So I'm gonna have to do the same thing that I did in the front elevation. So I select my reference plane and the face of that geometry, align and lock, and test it again. if you notice, I will be doing like a lot of testing as I do a change. That's how I realize that things are working. So that one is taken care of. The glass thickness is working as expected. It controls where the mountain will be. That's good. So let's go back to front. Now I want to test my height, right? Because I haven't tested that one yet. So I'm gonna go and do, let's do 7 feet, and remove constraints now. Come on. So what should I do? If I do remove constraints, I see it failing. It's like, okay, not a big deal. Maybe I just need to over constrain it or reconstrain it again. So what am I going to do? I'm going to edit the group and try to maybe try to stretch it. And of course, it's not going to work because this one is already constrained there. So I'm going to be running into a lot of constraint, and I cannot go anymore to edit this specific sweep because we saw that message in the beginning that it won't let us to align it or constrain it to elements that are not part of the group. So I'm really just stuck right here. I wouldn't be able to go for anymore beyond this. I can spend a lot of time trying to figure it out. I can probably change from creating a sweep to creating an extrusion. Maybe it would allow me to give me some drag arrows or some stretchy points that I can just reconstrain or something, but it's just going to take me a long time to try to find a workaround for this. And by the time I do this, I could have just done this single simple family separate and bring it here and constrain it and be done with it. So this is some of the things that we usually run. Not all of us, not all of you probably. And but I just wanted to point out sometimes this happens because we see it working at some point. It's like, okay, it's enough testing. Let's continue. Let's have this family done and pretend that is working correctly. And the problem comes when somebody changes something that wasn't tested. So to overcome this again, let's do the same test, but with a different, with doing a nested family now. So I am going to close this family completely without saving anything. Just wanted to show that point that is going to break with the live geometry. Okay, now let me grab my family that I have. Basically the same one. As you can see, and the name is a little different, but the setup is completely the same. So reference planes here, my parameters, everything set up correctly or the same way as the other one with the formulas, the parameters, the options, the mountains, everything. But this time instead, I am going to be using a nested component. So I'm also going to open a mountain family that I already preset. Because we have really half an hour to do this webinar. I don't want to spend a lot of time on creating from scratch. So I just created one previously to this. So what I decided to go with is a face-based family, and it's a simple extrusion or a sweep with the same way, a path and then a profile, right? So let's go see to the right view. We can see the profile. It's simple, and this material is already linked to a material parameter. This subcategory is also assigned, and we have mountain length is basically all we need, and we're gonna be needing for controlling this back in the panel family. And I need something to control the length of this to put it all the way, stretch it all the way from the bottom of the glass to the top of the glass. I selected this face base because this allows me to use this in a vertical position and a horizontal positions. There are other ways, of course, to do that, but at this point, or for this purpose, face-based family was fitting my needs at this point. So I mentioned I want to show you a little bit how to create a profile based on a DWG. So it is simple. If we go to, we're going to be going into editing this sweep here soon. But first of all, I want to show you I have a mountain profile DWG. that I will be bringing into Revit. And to do that, we have some standards not to bring DWGs or external geometry from other software into Revit, just so we don't get extra stuff in there, like layers and extra materials. It's just it's a lot more to clean up after all. So when you are using a DWG file to create your profile, it is recommended to open a new family from scratch. So if you go to new family, in this case, I'm just going to find a generic model template. Okay, and this by default opens pretty much all the views here that I don't really need. So I'm going to be using this, and I'm gonna close the rest. Okay, so I just need this in order to create some lines, and then the lines copy them. So if you go to your your insert tab and then say import CAD, or import CAD and navigate to where that DWG is. What I also can do is I can drag from my folder on my right screen, just drag in the DWG here, and it brings my profile, and I just place it somewhere, right? So let's say this was created based on a real mountain profile, so I can use this one to trace around it. So I can do that, or I can rotate it if needed. Okay, so all I need to do now is come to the annotate and start creating some lines here. So I'm going to trace over it. I'm going to ignore the center lines. I'm just going to do the outer lines. So when I put my mouse on the profile on one of the lines and I hit tab once, it likes to select everything else. So I'm going to click now, and as you can see, all the lines were created for me. I could have done it individually. Now if I move this one away, I have my lines that I can use for profiles, right? I can move it. So it's just now Revit lines. That's good. So now what I can do is select everything here, and I'm going to do a Control-C for copy. I am going to go back to this family, and then I can edit the sweep, and then edit the profile, and then I can basically do a Control-V. Okay. There's a line here that might be very, very short. So let's find out why. All right. So let's that would be the process anyway. So you will be able to paste it right here. Let's see if it lets me when I exit my. All right. I see. Perfect. Let me redo this really, really quick. I'm going to go to the right view. And I'm going to drag that profile really quick again. I'll create it in this view. That might make the difference. I'm going to annotate, symbolic lines, pick the lines, move this out of the way. I'll do a copy. And then edit the sweep, edit the profile. And here we go. Okay. I had just selected the wrong view as well. So now that I have this profile, I can move it. So MV or move command, and I just pick the center and drag it to the center, and I'll be done with that. So finish, finish. Now I have my different profile for my sweep. Okay, now the next one is to bring it into my project, into my panel family. Say okay. And now it's looking for a face to be placed. So right there is selecting my glass face. And if you want to do it again, 3D view would be a better option. So this mountain was created right here under Windows category. So if I can drag it, and now you can see that it's highlighting that glass face. So that's where I want to put it. And I am going to, if I do a space bar, it will rotate it 90 degrees, whichever position I want. So I'm going to place it right there. Now I'm going to go to the front elevation and continue my setup. Now, instead of having an actual live geometry, I have a nested component that I can use. The first thing to do is make sure everything is constrained and mapped. So those parameters that we had, the mountain length and the materials and everything else, we can now constrain them. So in this case, the material is a type parameter that I had in there. So if I go edit type and find that mountain material, I can link it to that material of the door here. And that was a wood material. So click OK. That one is taken care of. Now mountain length. There are a couple of ways. So, since it is an instance parameter, I can drag these ends and constrain them individually. And also because I have a parameter in here that tells me the height of this glass, I can also use that parameter and link it. So let's do that. So if I go and link this mountain length to the bar vertical length right here, bar vertical length, and it takes that same dimension. So now before I even start constraining, if I change my height, notice that this also updates and it grows. So now we have to constrain it a couple times. One is in the center here and also the center right here. So let's go align to the center of this reference plane and find the center of this family and lock it. Now let's find the center of the glass and the center of this family, which is a little line highlighting right there, and lock it. Okay. So if I start testing all these other options, the width and the height, this should be constrained now. And I don't need to really go over here and constrain it because the glass is actually hosting this family. So at that point, that would be constrained. I could come and align and lock as well, but that's already hosted. So let's go back to front. And let's do an array, a normal array now. So here, array. I am going to select the first reference plane to the second, which is this one right here. Okay, so select the family. I lost it for a minute. So array, first reference plane to the second. And if you want, you can give it some other numbers. And since we already know that we don't need to go click the second and then edit group, we can just do it from here. See, if I move this one somewhere or down, you see how the rest of the elements will go in that angle, just following the pattern right there. Wherever I move the second is where the other ones go. So I need to constrain the second one. So align to the center of this reference plane and here, and also to the center, just like I did to the first one. And now the consecutive elements or instances of that array will just be placed correctly. The next thing I need to do is the same thing I did with the live geometry. So select this array count and link it to a parameter. In this case, as we saw, bar count. And there we go. So we have an account of 5 lights. Let's do 3 now. So 1, 2, 3, it's working. Let's test the same things that we were doing. So width, it works. Height, that works. So see, it didn't really take me that long to create a second family, or use the profile of a DWG, create my sweep really quick, and bring it into here. probably took me less than I was trying to figure out and troubleshoot the live geometry here, and it was not even correct. It was still failing. So that's why, based on some of those issues that we've seen, I wanted to share with you and pretty much explain why we prefer nested families when creating the arrays. And like I said in the beginning, it wasn't going to be an in-depth training or demo on how to set up the whole formulas or reference planes and parameters. However, there will be a mini training coming up in the future that I will be talking about, from the beginning, from scratch, setting up a family, creating those reference planes, parameters, formulas, and some tricks and tips here and there to help people doing from scratch. So this one was just a little troubleshooting for why sometimes things fail. All right, so as we saw, I try to use nested components as much as possible, or if not always, when creating your arrays. Don't forget to constrain your families where they need to be on those reference planes, and also link your parameters. That's very important when using the nested components. Just like I did with the mountain length and the material, they will take and they will be controlled by the parameters in the main family. And like I was just doing here and showing the demo, test, test, and test. So that will give you more confidence on that your family won't fail when you send it to a user or somebody's going to try to break it without knowing, right? So test it before they do. If there are any questions, go ahead and put them on the questions box there. I appreciate your comments, your questions. I don't see any questions coming up. So I just want to invite you to go check our website, catechnologycenter.com, the events tab, to check the mini trainings that are coming up for the month and the webinars as well. Look out for one of those for the arrays that I will be presenting as well in the future. Well, thank you again for watching. Have a great afternoon.